How's it whacking? Treeface here. I've been stroking my head for a while now, and I've popped out a load of wisdom. Equality is bullshit. Equality, at best, is nothing more than a slogan used by people to express very shallow thoughts and to avoid thinking seriously about a topic. At worst, it's used to ignore the problems of others. What is equality? In the context of society or politics, I suppose it means treating everyone the same. In mathematical terms, of course, it means the same. 2 equals 2. 2 equals 4 divided by 2. 2 does not equal 3. And I guess it means, when used by people, to mean treating everyone the same regardless of any variables such as skin color, sex, or creed. Let's examine that for a moment. Let's start with equality under the law. I suppose this means that everyone is subject to the same laws regardless of who they are as a person. Or at least that's the idea. But what constitutes equality? It depends on what level, what perspective you're coming at it with. Viewed from different vantage points, what is equal to one person may not be equal in the eyes of another person. Let's take an example here. Gay marriage. During the debate over gay marriage was the first time I realized that equality was bullshit. Each side was fighting for equality in their own respects. The liberals wanted equal marriage, and by that they meant they wanted both gay people and heterosexual people to both be able to marry. That's equal, right? Heterosexuals can marry, homosexuals can marry. That's equal, that's the same. Sure. The libertarians that came along, people like Penn Jillette, went around arguing that no one should have the right to marry. Heterosexuals, homosexuals, none of them should be involved in marriage. The government shouldn't be involved in intimate relationships. So no one should be able to get married. They wanted to get rid of the laws of marriage for heterosexual people. And is this the same? It is. This is equal treatment. If no one has the right to marry, then everyone's being treated the same. This is equality under the law. So we have two groups of people. Both came to the opposite conclusions about the same subject, and they're both accurately described as equality. That seems to call into question the usefulness of the idea of equality. The Republicans as well also were fighting for marriage equality. People like Mike Huckabee used to make the argument that we already had equal marriage. Everyone was already treated the same under the law. Everyone had the legal right to marry someone of the opposite sex, and no one had the right to marry someone of the same sex. That's equal treatment. One set of laws for all people. They were already treating people the same under the law. From that perspective, they too are arguing for equality. Everyone there wanted the same set of laws for everyone. So everyone there was fighting for equality, even though they came to vastly different conclusions, directly opposing conclusions. So each one of them could accurately say, I'm for equality. And you would not be able to deduce from that their position on the subject. What about taxes? We could charge someone a flat rate for taxes each year. Everyone is charged the same thing. That would be equal treatment under the law, wouldn't it? We could charge everyone $10,000 in taxes each year. That would mean someone who's only making about $25,000 a year would pay $10,000 in taxes, which is quite a hefty price. However, someone who's making $100 million a year would only be charged $10,000. Now that's the same. You're treating him exactly the same as the low-income person. Isn't that equality under the law? I suppose it is, but it doesn't quite seem fair, does it? The difference in the outcome, the burden placed on those people are incredibly different. The millionaire is essentially no burden whatsoever to pay that. However, the person making $25,000 a year, that's a devastating amount. So should we think about equality of taxes or equality of burden placed on people? Which perspective wins out? The concept of equality doesn't solve that quandary. What about equality of outcome? This is probably the most rejected idea of equality, and rightfully so. It's essentially the idea of, well, no one's better than anyone else, so everyone should be successful and prosperous. There will never be equality of outcome. People will always prioritize their lives differently. Some will prioritize making money. Some will prioritize their family. Some will prioritize their own happiness and even hedonistic ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. People have the freedom to do it as they please. They will choose to prioritize different things. And money, or any particular type of success, is not necessarily the end goal of anything. People are not born equal. They have different skill sets that some may be more valuable than others. The only way we can fix it is if we have some kind of Harrison Bergeron type of dystopian future where we withhold other people from succeeding. We prevent smarter people from being intelligent. Kurt Vonnegut's book describes this very well. Harrison Bergeron. It's an interesting read, and it's a terrible future, a terrible idea to actively prevent people from using their talents to succeed. If we could also simply equal the playing field by making people succeed equally across the board. We could give equal money to everyone, regardless of their job or their productivity. We could make everyone have a standard income of $100,000 a year, regardless of what they do as a job. A person who works 30 hours a week will get $100,000 a year, and someone who works 50 hours a week will also get $100,000 a year, regardless of the quality of their work or the type of work they're doing. The problem with that, of course, is that it destroys incentives. It destroys productivity. It destroys anyone's incentive to actually work and better themselves. Of course, nobody wants that. But what about equality of opportunity? That's what everyone really means when they talk about equality. That's a problem as well, because for the most part, it is impossible to give everyone the same opportunities. A parent will always invest more or less in their child. Some parents will invest their entire lives in their child. Others will barely give them a second thought. A parent's level of success, in other words, their outcome, which can't be equal, will determine the opportunities their children have, the opportunities of living in a higher scale environment, a less dangerous environment, where you can more opportunities to learn, opportunities to go to better schools, to have better daycares. According to studies, wealthier parents actually read more to their children. This may be because they can afford to have a stay-at-home parent, a stay-at-home mother that has more time to read to them and tend to them. As a result, these children do much better in their early stages of education, and it kind of builds on itself. Each level of education, they achieve more than their lower income contemporaries. They end up getting better scores in high school. They go to better colleges, partly because of their better scores and partly because of the financial capacities of their parents. The only thing we can do to stop this is if we have some type of Plato's Republic scenario where we take away the children from their parents and raise them in some government facility where everyone is given the same assets and the same opportunity, the same education, and the same level of attention. This could only lead to disaster. We know that babysitters treat kids not as well as their parents would because they have less invested in them. And it would just lead to complete disaster, an incredible amount of abuse, and it would just be terrible for all involved. A fate worse than hell. Society would collapse. People need opportunities to fail. They need opportunities to realize what they are incapable of. If we keep rewarding people, regardless of their success levels, people will pursue whatever they desire, and they'll never find their true abilities. If we keep rewarding people who are 4 foot tall, and we keep allowing them to win basketball matches, even against people who are 7 feet tall, just because we weigh the score in their favor, so they end up winning even though they score way less baskets, then that person will never give up on their dream of basketball, and they'll never find the talents that they may actually have. Maybe that person can't play basketball, but maybe they're a great musician or something, but they'll never know that if they keep pursuing something that they have no business pursuing. Unfortunately, I believe the concept of equality is actually being used in nefarious ways. There are people who use the idea of equality to ignore people's problems. I'm a fan of the Atheist Experience. They have a host on that show, or they used to have a host, named Jeff D. And on one of their other podcasts, the Non-Profits podcast, he used to make an argument about equality. He said that men have more rights than women. And because men have more rights than women, if we fight for men's rights, then we are fighting for inequality. And he used this as an excuse to not fight for men's rights. He said we should only fight for women's rights until they achieve parity with men. And until then, we should not care about men's issues. He directly used this to ignore men's issues. This, of course, is a classic fallacy of relative privation. Just because one person's problems are more than another's doesn't mean we should necessarily ignore the person with the least problems. He was using equality as a goal in and of itself. That the goal was not achieving the most rights for the most amount of people. The goal was simply achieving equality. And that's a horrible mindset, because it means only the people at the bottom will ever have their issues dealt with. And because of that, that is largely what's responsible for this oppression Olympics that is going on in the SJW community with the left wing. They are actually competing against one another to see who has it worse, because they know, because of this mindset of equality, that only the people who have it the worst are going to get their issues talked about. So they are in a constant war with one another as to who has it worse. And it's not really about who has it worse, it's about whose issues should be dealt with. And we wouldn't be having this fight if we simply dealt with everyone's issues and we didn't try to ignore people's issues because someone else has it worse. There's no reason why we can't deal with everyone's issues at the same time. There doesn't have to be a focus on one group of issues, one group of people, or one group of problems at a time. We could all collectively or individually deal with any issue that we feel we want to deal with. If we simply dealt with everyone's issues, we wouldn't have to argue over who has it worse. We wouldn't have to have the Suppression Olympics. At the end of the day, equality should not be a goal in and of itself. We shouldn't be fighting for equality. We should be fighting to have the most rights for as many people as possible, to have the greatest society we possibly can have. And we shouldn't ignore people's issues for other people's issues in the name of equality. Equality is a vague concept that doesn't accurately communicate any idea or your position on any issue. So it shouldn't be used as a stance, as a position. You should articulate your ideas clearly and as concretely as possible. There's no need for this vague concept of equality. I see no value in it. I only see it as a lazy way to articulate your ideas, and at worst, a way of ignoring other people's problems. Now it's time for me to beat off. You should go beat off too.